And here I will adjust the crease value for these edges. I will select these vertices and Shift Z, make it a little bit straight here, planar on the Z axis. And I will select these edges here and increase the crease value. If you want to change the position of these vertices, I have constraint to face set to Shift D. So when I press that and move around the vertex, it will be constrained to the faces. Without this on, I can just move the vertex anywhere. With this on, I can only move it on the faces. This is great for fine-tuning the vertices. Alright, at this point I can actually switch to edge, select an edge, Shift T to loop, hold Control. Now you can use these right here to convert your selections. With these edges selected, if I hold Control and click on the polygon here, those edges will be converted into polygons. I can now click on Grow and then Detach and detach this. I can now give this darker material. And now I also want to copy these modifiers, and I can select this, right click and paste them here. If I click on Paste Instanced, it means they are now instanced, which means if I change one of them, it will affect the other one as well. So you notice here when I turn off the Open Subdivision, it's also turned off for the visor because they're now instanced. You also know they're instanced because it will be in italics. So notice how the Open Subdiv and Symmetry modifiers are slanted here. That shows you that they are instanced. If you wish to undo the instancing effect, simply click it, right click, Make Unique. Make Unique. And now if I turn this off, the visor is no longer being affected. So notice that right here we have this effect happening. So what I will do is select this, Shift X, right click here to make this 0, and now it will connect. And do the same for the bottom, Shift X, 0. Now you'll notice that right here there's a little bit of a gap in the visor. So what I can do is do the same thing that I did previously. Switch to border, select, 2, hold Alt, deselect, apply the script, but this time just set the angle to 0 and just set the extension depth to a little bit, just so we no longer have that effect. And now you notice there's no longer a gap here because we moved the visor just a little bit past it. So what we have right now is very simple geometry. It's still very easy to quickly change this. All I have to do is just move a few vertices, in this case a couple vertices forward. I can instantly have big changes simply by moving very few amounts of geometry. And we can easily control the sharpness using Open Subdivision and the creases. So notice right here, for example, that in the concept art we have it needs to be a little bit sharper here, whereas here it's very curvy. So all I need to do is select an edge, select this edge, Shift T to loop, and now I will press space to activate Symmetry and Open Subdiv, and now simply increase the crease value here to make it a little bit sharper, while still keeping the geometry very simple. Alright, so we're pretty much going to work on this piece by piece. Temporarily I'll turn off Symmetry, and here I can simply select these two edges and Shift and move it to the left here. Planar on the Y-axis, so I'll press Shift Y, and I'll just move this past here. If I want to, I can make it a little bit more accurate. I can press Alt-C to activate Cut, and I think that's a default shortcut. And I can cut right here if I want to, but I'll just keep it going through for now. Actually, I will select this vertex, Shift V, turn on edge constraints to move this up. Select this one and also move this up, like so. Now I will press 2, switch to edges, select this, Shift T, deselect the top. Actually, we have something here called step mode. And you can access it by going to Modify Selection, Step Mode. Now, I've got this set to Shift S. So when I press Shift S, you can see on the top right here, Step Mode on. What this allows you to do is, let me turn it off for now, Shift S. So if I select an edge right here and press Shift T or click on Loop, it will select the entire loop, which because of this topology, it goes all the way around here. However, let's say I just want this edge, and all the edges in between. That's where step loop comes in. So I'll press Shift S, notice it's on here. I will click on this edge, I will hold Control and click on this edge, and all the edges in between are selected, without the whole loop being selected. So now I'll press Shift S to turn it off, and I will select this edge here, and I'll once again use Extend Borders. Set the appropriate angle. Now you notice in this case when I try and increase this, it's giving me all sorts of strange results. So what did I do wrong? I forgot to turn off edge constraints. So let me turn that off, and then let me try again, and I notice it's working fine. So sometimes the edge constraints and phase constraints can catch you off guard, so definitely don't forget about them. And I will set the appropriate angle, which in this case will be 90, and greatly decrease the extension depth, maybe 4. We just need a little bit here. Okay. Now remember, I need to go back here and make sure this is 0. So because I used the script, it went out in this direction, but it's not in the center. These 3 vertices are in the center, but this one also needs to be, so simply right click right here, and this will make the value 0. Now right clicking on the right here will not always make this value 0. For example, if I have a cylinder here, and I go here under sides, if I right click here, it'll become 3, because that's the minimum amount of sides it can have. Alright? And with these edges selected, I will now hold Control and click here to convert it to polygon, and once again detach, because this is a separate object, or at least I'm modeling it that way. I can see it's a separate object because it looks like it's a lighter shade of gray, so I will just treat it as a separate object. And remember, I've still got those modifiers copied, so I can simply right click and paste them to get them back. And these edges are still selected, so I can now hold Shift and extrude down. And now I will move these vertices down here, and these will follow. I also need to select this edge here. So this is a new edge, so it no longer has the crease value that we previously set. So what I will do is select this edge here to get the crease value. I can select this, Control C to copy it, and then I can select this edge here and paste that crease value, Control V, and now you notice it's also creased. So this is before, and this is with the crease value. It's just taking that and sharpening it up a little bit. So you notice how working with creases in Open Subdivision makes it very easy to sharpen things up here. And I will give this a lighter material. And there we are. So now we've got the visor. We've got this dark part around the visor. We've got this lighter gray part. So when you're modeling this, how do you approach this? When you're modeling this part here, do you try and cut this out, or will you do something else? In this case, you notice that I've actually got this geometry, this part, just going all the way down here, all the way through here. So one thing you might want to know is that when you're modeling, you can just kind of leave the parts that aren't visible, you can leave them alone. In other words, this part here will be blocked off by this metal part, so we can just have this geometry right here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to treat this object, these objects, as their own separate objects. This right here and this right here. And later on, if I need to, I can use Boolean to connect them together, fix up the topology, and get them all to be one part if I need to. So it's a very good idea just to keep objects as separate and connect them later on if need be. Keeping your objects separate makes it a lot simpler to work with them, and it makes it simpler to apply materials as well. So I can just select all the separate objects here and just give them their own separate custom material instead of having to use a multi-sub-object material or something like that. Right, next I will work on this part here at the front bottom. So I'll select this, and Alt-Q. And for now I'll disable the symmetry modifier and just focus on this. I'll just select this, go to the front viewport, and extrude this down. And then go to the left viewport and just kind of adjust a little bit more. Shift V, edge constraints, and just kind of clean things up a little bit. Here I will press Shift S, step mode, select, hold Control, select to select these 4 edges here. In this case, I can really just do this. I can just kind of select it like this and then hold Alt and deselect. But it's a good idea to get used to using step mode. It will definitely come in handy when you have much more complex objects. And then I will hold Shift and extrude this down. Press 1 to switch to vertex, Shift W to activate target weld, and then weld right here. And then just do a little bit of adjustment. And then adjust in the front viewport. And activate symmetry, and then just kind of adjust a little bit more. Alright, and then I'll continue in the front viewport. Just extrude these 2 down first. 1 to switch to vertex, and adjust this. Now right now the lighting information on the concept art isn't really telling me much about this. If I look in the front or the side viewport, I can't really tell if this is supposed to be flat or curved inside or outwards. It looks relatively flat, so we'll just go under that. So then I will also extrude the rest here. 1 to switch to vertex, and then Shift W to weld. And then adjust in the left viewport. So here I will be kind of prioritizing the front viewport over the side one. And now what I need to do is actually, this bottom part is actually a separate material. So what I need to do is select all these polygons, or I can simply click here, hold Shift, hold Control and Shift, and there we go. And I can simply detach that. And I can paste those modifiers right here and give this a lighter material. Now this geometry is a separate object. I need to give a little bit of thickness. So I'll just Control A, and I use Shift and Space to bevel out. So I'll set this to local and bevel out a bit, let's say 5. And then we'll go here, select these polygons, Shift X, make a plane on the X-axis, right click here to make it 0 and delete. and I'll also delete these polygons in the back. So there's one way to add this kind of thickness here. And if I go into the left viewport, you can see that here on the bottom it's not quite straight. So how can we make this, the bottom polygon, straight? If I select all of this and use some of the planar tools, if I use planar Z, it becomes like this. If I use planar X, it's like this, and planar Y doesn't work either. So what I've actually done is, here under Customize User Interface, here in the category I can find something called Soulburn Scripts. And I haven't made a separate video about where you can find this, how you can download it, and how you can use it. But basically here I have a script called Align Viewport to Face, and I've got that set to Control F. So pretty much what I do is I select a polygon that I want to use, that I want all the other polygons to match. This one right here. I'll press Control F. What it has done is create a new camera right here. So now I'll press P to exit out of the camera mode, and you can see the camera is right here. So what we need to do is I will select this, hold Alt and click to select all of this, press C to go back to the camera, and then I will use View Align. Then press P to exit out of there, and you can see all the polygons are now aligned perfectly. And then I can move a little bit down here. So that's what you can use to kind of straighten out certain polygons that don't work with planar X, Y, or Z. And now I will set up these edges going through here. So I will select the geometry, the reference image, and Alt Q to isolate it. Alright, so pretty much maybe make it line up a little bit better. Alright, and then I will press Alt-C to activate the cut tool, and I think that Alt-C is the default shortcut for the cut tool. I don't think that's a custom shortcut I've set. So simply click here, kind of match this edge here, and then I'll go down here and cut here. When you activate the cut tool, Alt-C, you can also activate snaps. It makes it easy to snap to a vertex and cut. Alright, now that I've got that, I need to clean this up a little bit. So I'll press Shift W to activate target world, and then I'll click right here. And then I will also cut here. And then I will remove this. So I use Control R for remove. And then I need to clean up this n-gon here. And we can do it several ways. We can cut from here to here, from here to here, and from here to here. I will just choose this one. This method right here. Then we'll select this edge right here and Control Shift S for set flow. In order to get rid of this triangle here, I will cut right here. Shift Alt W and remove this here. And I will also cut right here. Now you may be seeing there's a difference between the front viewport and the side viewport. And that's because that with the concept art itself, let's say I create a new plane right here, and I can use this to measure things out. You can see that the top is pretty much even, and so is the bottom. But it does match up in many places. Here, for example, you can see that this edge right here matches up on the visor, but some parts don't match up. For example, this bottom part right here, it's here, but on this one it's a little bit higher. So you just have to pick a reference image aside and model it more accurately on one of them than the other one. So then I will also cut here as well. and then I will select these two vertices, Shift Alt W, and then these, and then Shift Alt W. Alright, now if I were modeling this, I could do this several ways. I could try and make every single one of these a separate piece. But in this case, what I would do is simply select all of the edges, and then Shift T to loop. And these right here as well. Make sure I've got the right edges selected. And now that I've got these edges selected, I will go to Extrude. Now, usually I have Extrude set to Control B, and when I press Control B, I can then click and then move left and right to change the width, and then up and down to change the height. But if I want a little bit more control, I need to click on the right here, which will give me the settings. So most tools have an option where you can use just a tool and just then use your mouse to manipulate it. But if you want more accuracy, you'll want to click on the settings here. So I will just have about 0.5 base width, and then maybe -1 for the height. And there we are. And then I'll activate symmetry and open subdiv, and we can set some weights, some creases. So first thing I'll do is just clear all the creases. In this case I have none. Now I have a shortcut set to Control-Alt-C, which allows me to select all the convex edges. And I do have a previously made video about where you can find this and how you can set it to a shortcut. But it selects all of the edges for me, but I also need to select some of the ones myself, like in the center here. And then I will turn off cage and increase the crease value here to make it sharp. You can see here I've got this a little bit too close, so I need to weld this together. I need to make sure this is set to 0. Here, for example, I need to select these 4 edges and set the crease value a little bit higher. I need to go to the left viewport and kind of fix the curvature here. What I may need to do is actually temporarily insert another loop through here. Now I have more control, and I can move this like so and get a more fitting value. And I also, this does not need to be creased, so I can select these edges and right click here, because I do want this to actually be smooth. And if I want this to be a little bit more like this, I can activate edge constraints, move this to the left and then to the right, a little bit down like so.